Welcome everyone to the day 2 of 3-6 basic certification training. Let's wait for a few more minutes until everyone's here. Welcome everyone to the day 2 of 3.6 basic certification training. Yesterday we saw about what is 3.6 free and what is 3.6 hosted, and how to install a 3.6 free and 3.6 hosted instance. And in today's module, so we are going to see about, sorry, my mouse is not working. Yep. So today we are going to see about subtrunk. So basically, with yesterday's module, so we've installed a 3.6 instance, but the 3.6 instance is just internal, so you would be able to make and receive calls. And you can, we also saw about the three different 3.6 apps that are available: the mobile app, PW app, and the web client. And also what is a router phone or IP phone, and how to provision them, and what's needed to provision, and how it works, how everything works in the background when you started provisioning a handset. So we saw all those things yesterday. So with those stuff, so you have a 3.6 phone system and you can make internal calls, but how do you make external calls to third parties or people from on another 3.6? So that's where SIP trunks comes into play. SIP trunk is basically a virtual or a cloud-based PSTN line, which allows you to make and receive calls, no, make and receive PSTN calls. So to make and receive calls, you have to create an account with the SIP trunk provider, and it is always recommended to use a preferred or a supported SIP trunk provider for 3CX. And a SIP trunk provider will connect you to the old style PSTN lines. Having your own SIP trunk provider accounts mean that you will have full control over your phone numbers, and most of the time, you would be able to make changes and stuff like that depending on the access that you have. So basically, SIP-trunk provides access to the public switch telephony network. So when the normal, if you remember the old Telstra dot product, all the Telstra PSTN lines, which is physical cables running to the premises, now everything is cloud-based, and they are register-based trunks. So all you need is the authentication ID, password, and server URL, and you can register that directly to a 3.6 phone system to connect and transport via existing internet lines, and no additional hardware required because all SIP trunks are now cloud-based. And also, you can provide international numbers depending on the service provider. And outbound, you pay local rates to their point of presence, and inbound show a global presence to your customers. So when I say inbound, so you will have our own number where people can dial in and they can reach you out through the 3CX. And if you have any questions during the sessions or after the sessions, please feel free to post it on the chat, guys. The 3.6 supports a large number of SIP trunk providers, and they have been selected based on ease of configuration and ease of account setup and support. All these SIP trunks have already done interop testing with 3.6 directly, and that is why 3.6 always recommend to use preferred or supported SIP trunk providers. And yeah, so you can farm. There are lots of SIP trunk providers available within Australia, and using a preferred or supported SIP trunk provider means 3.6 is pre-configured to work with the VoIP provider. So when I say pre-configured, so you will have templates already pre-installed on your 3CX. All you need to do is just enter the authentication ID and password, and it's going to be provisioned. And VoIP provider, you can be sure to get support from both 3.6 and the provider, because when if you remember yesterday with the 3.6 support policies or the module that we saw, I know it was a short module, but 3C, if there is any issues related to the SIP trunks, 3.6 will support only if you're using a preferred or supported SIP trunk. If you're not, if you're using a third party or a not supported SIP trunk, 3.6 will not support or help you in case of any issues. And if you do not use a supported provider, make sure that the VoIP provider is familiar with 3.6 and will support you, because 3.6 will not support you. And you should be aware that in many cases, additional support will be required, as 3.6 will not assist in the configuration of any unsupported or third-party VoIP provider. And the reason so preferred and supported, so there are the only trunks that can be used on 3.6 SMB free or the 3.6 free version. And there are also other SIP trunks like Telstra, Optus, and stuff. They are supported with the limitations, so you need to be cautious about that. But make sure you always use a preferred or supported SIP trunk. And the other advantage of having a preferred or supported SIP trunk is there will be ongoing testing between 3CX and the provider, making sure, for example, whenever there is a new update that is coming for 3CX, the new update will be tested interop with the SIP trunk provider to making sure that doesn't affect anything on the SIP side of things or the 3.6 side of things. So there is always ongoing testing for every new versions to making sure they work normally. And the templates are already available in 3.6, so you don't have to go and tweak the settings manually. Because the template is already there, all you need to do is give in the credentials and it's going to be provisioned or registered. And easy to configure and fully supported by 3CX. So DID. So DID stands for direct inbound dialing. When I say DID, so it might seem fancy, but it's basically the other name for a phone number or a local phone number or a virtual mobile number or anything. So DID is basically another name for a phone number. So which is additional. So VoIP provider provides DID or direct in dial or direct inward dialing numbers, and which allows you to route calls directly to a user or any of the system extension to queue or a ring group or an auto attendant. So it can be anything. And you can also route calls directly to a department or a digital receptionist and stuff like that. And these virtual numbers are priced at a fraction of a cost, adding physical lines to the SIP trunks. So each provider will have their own SIP trunk pricing and also DID pricing. So it depends on the provider, but you can add any trunk that is supported or preferred into the 3.6. And it doesn't mean you cannot have only one single trunk. So you can have multiple trunks on one single 3.6. And additional numbers associated with the account, so route incoming calls to destination based on the dial number. So for example, you can have 100 number range, or maybe let's take you have one main business number and 5 additional numbers. And the additional numbers, if someone wants to have a direct number, you can assign that number directly to the users, and main number you can point to go to an IVR where it says press 1 for sales, press 2 for support and stuff like that, and you have the call queues. And so when someone calls, it's going to go through point to the IVR, and from the option pressed, it's going to route the call accordingly. And you can route calls directly to department, and that is only for dedicated PBX. It's not available on the free version, because with the free version, the instance that you're getting is a department, and you cannot have a department within department. And you can send it directly to a voicemail for a user or a voicemail group, and you can also forward to an external number. For example, let's say someone needs to have a direct number, but they don't want to use a 3.6 app on their mobile phone, but they want to receive calls on their mobile phone. You can point the call to directly as soon as a call is received. So you can point the number directly to forward to an outside number. So the advantage here is the as soon as the call is hitting 3CX, so then the caller will just be just telling the main number, not the main number, the direct number, but it's the person will be receiving the call on their mobile and not through the 3.6 app. And you can set up a fax service and you can send it to the fax service, and also call for a designer if you adding DIDs. You can add DIDs either as a single DID or as a group of DID, like you can upload a .txt file or a XML file directly to the zip trunk. So for example, let's say you have 500 DIDs and you don't want to copy paste or type each and every number, each and every single line. So if you have a XML file or a TXT file with all the DIDs, you can upload that to the zip trunk. And make sure, so 3.6 prefers E164 format, but always make sure what sort of format your provider is using or the provider is expecting. The reason why I was saying is, so each provider has their own format. So it can be either a 0 8. I'm taking Adelaide as an example. It can be a 0 8 or a 618 or a plus 618. The reason why it is important for you to know the format that your provider is using is, for example, let's take Breeze Connect. So we use 6.1 format. So all numbers will be added as 618 or 612 or 613 or 617, depending on. So let's say you are using a Breeze zip trunk and you enter the number as a 0. So 0870785300. Let's take that as an example. So when a call, and you've assigned that directly to a user. So when a call comes into the 3.6, someone dialing that number, 3.6 is going to, it's going to the Breeze trunk, and from Breeze Connect side, the number the trunk is expecting is 618, but the numbers in the 3.6 is just 0.8. So there is no actual match on the 3.6. So what the 3.6 is going to do is, there is no actual match, so I cannot forward it to, and I just need to follow the default direct route, which is assigned on the zip trunk, which I'll show you during the demo today. But yeah, so this is most common issues saying I've added the DID, I've assigned it to a user, but why it's not routing properly? Because maybe the number is not entered in the right format. That's the first thing I would recommend to check. And enter the number with the +6 last digits, and yeah, depending on the format that the provider is using, please enter exactly how the provider will be expecting on the 3.6. And you can also use the star asterisk wildcard for DIDs, and those are just for additional DIDs and not for the main trunk number. So you might get a question like, what is the wildcard that you can use for DIDs or caller ID reformatting? So asterisk would be the answer for that. And DIDs with the wildcard cannot be used as a caller ID because when you use that as a caller ID, then as soon as you try to make a call, the call will get rejected because the receiving carrier sees that as an invalid number and will reject the call directly. So outbound rules. After you have configured the SIP trunk, so you need to create or amend an outbound rule to allow extension users to make calls using it. So what is the rules? So basically, it kind of like defines how your calls will be pushed out of the 3.6 to the provider. And you need to, outbound rules are mandatory for a 3.6 to push a call out. If you don't have any outbound rules, you cannot make any outbound calls at all. And outbound rules route calls depending on either the dial number's prefix or the extension placing the call or the length of the dial number or even the extension group membership, and you can configure it like granularly. For example, like certain extensions from only from the certain department or a member of the certain department can only make international call or stuff like that. And you can have a prefix say 0, and you can also have an outbound rule which applies to a set of extension. So as I mentioned previously, so let's say my so Breeze Connect just follows 6.1, and I don't want to dial 618 all the time or 6.1 all the time. So if I just dial E08, the calls will the call still go through? You can, yes, the call will go through, but you need to set that up in the outbound rules. So for example, if I dial 08 number, I need to tell the outbound rule if someone's calling as 08, I need to strip the 0 and prefix with a 6.1 and send the number to the carrier. So that's how you can play with the outbound rules to make things easy for you or for the customer to dial out. And outbound rule has a set of condition which will trigger it, such as which user or department is calling, or the dial number, or the dial number's length. And only when the conditions are met, each rule can have up to 5 routes, and which 36 will use sequentially. So it always goes from top to bottom. And if one of the route fails to process the call, for example, if a SIP trunk is down and if a SIP trunk is down or if it is at a capacity, so it's going to use the second route. Sorry guys, just a sec. Yeah, so the outbound rules always follow from top to bottom, and outbound rules are triggered according to their priority. And top to bottom, if you have 5 rules to the previous rule has been triggered because the conditions were met. So basically, if the first route is down, so it will go on try the second one, and if the second one is not able to reach, it goes try third one. And if it is getting connected with the third one, the fourth and fifth will not be used because the condition, it always goes from top to bottom and the condition set for the route 3 has already been met. So yeah, outbound rules allows or restrict call numbers, and you can select SIP trunk based on criteria. And this is where also where you can set like failover trunks. For example, you have one trunk as route 1 and a failover at route 2. So only when trunk 1 fails or busy, it uses the route 2, which can be a different trunk. And it can be based on originating internal user, originating user based on department membership, or dial number length. And if you have any questions, feel free to post it on the chat, guys. So yeah, so you this is what I was talking previously, the routes. So you can set route based on the conditions, and it always starts from route 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So uh, there will be 5 routes for each and every outbound rule, and it's not mandatory to configure all those, but you need to have at least one route set for an outbound rule. And the route will be if the route is busy, let's say the call comes in and it's trying route 0, and if it is busy, and when busy means exceeded maximum calls allowed through the trunk. So let's say you have trunk A, and you trunk A, you have 4 channels, and all the 4 channels are busy, so it's not able to go through. So then it will use the second route, which is route 1, and it goes on until it can find a match. And it will also go to the second route if the route is unavailable. So for example, so when you try to make a call, it's going to send a invite to the provider or the other side. If the other side hasn't responded within 32-second mark, which is the request timeout, if there is no request back from the other side, it is going to like not follow through the current route, and then it will try the next route. And yeah, PBX tries to place call on the next route, so that's how it works. And this is how you can also make use to set up a failover trunk. So for example, you can set route 0 as the primary and route 1 as your secondary or failover. So only when route 1 is unavailable or busy or not cannot be reached, then it tries route 2, and then the call will connect through. Emergency number. So when an emergency number is dialed, the PBX prioritizes this number and ignores any outbound in-office or out-office rules. And you need to make sure you should not create users that is basically emergency number. For example, let's say you have a 3-digit extension 3CX, which will allow you to create an extension as 000. And you know 000 is our emergency number. So let's say if there is an actual emergency and someone is trying to dial 000 from their desk phone or their 3CX app, it will not reach the emergency services. The reason is because The 36 will always see whenever a number is dialed, it will see if it is an internal number. If it is not, then it passes to the SIP trunk and to the outside world. So let's say you have an extension which is a 000, the extension number. So as soon as a user dials 000, it will automatically dial the internal extension and will not connect to the external emergency services. So it is super, super important that you do not create any users that has a emergency number. And yeah, so make sure you identify all the emergency numbers and you just enter them into the emergency numbers column. I'll show you where you can add those emergency numbers in the 3CX. Is there any special requirement for emergency numbers out? No special requirements. Two ways you can do it is either add the emergency numbers under the emergency number column, or you can just create an outbound rule and you can put it at the top. So because outbound rules also follow from top to bottom. So as soon as someone dials 000, you're pushing the 3.6 to go pass the call through the trunk. And outbound caller ID. So outbound calls will by default get the main trunk number as their caller ID. And if an extension has the ID assigned, then by default it will use this as a caller ID. And you can still set up the caller ID at extension level, but only few providers will allow so-called clip no screening. So as it has been abused by spam callers. So yeah, so you three places you can set up caller IDs on the 3.6 is SIP trunk level, the outbound rules level, and the user level. And the number to show when calling out, so that's basically the outbound caller ID. For example, you have direct DIDs assigned for all users, but whenever someone calls out, if they wanted to show the main business number, so you can mask it by assigning the main business number as the outbound caller ID. And also there is this web. So as I mentioned previously, there are three places you can enter SIP trunk, user, and outbound rules. And you can ask, so I have caller ID A on a SIP trunk, caller ID B on a user, and caller ID C on the outbound rule. So if I make a call, which caller ID it's going to use? So the outbound rules caller ID always has the highest priority because that's where the call will be pushed out. That's the last point where the calls will be pushed out of the 3CX. So even if a user is making a call which has a caller ID, it's going to go through the trunk and that has a caller ID that will be overriding the user level. And from the and when it goes to the outbound rules and finds a match, and if that is a caller ID in the outbound rules, it is going to override whatever the previous caller ID was. So basically default for all users are SIP trunk automatically. So let's say for example with the example one, so they have so this is the 3.6 phone system and this is the PSTN external and these are the internal users. And you can see, so if you set up if you want all calls to have one single outbound caller ID, which is 1234556, then you just put that on the trunk level, SIP trunk level. So anyone making a call extension 100, 101, or 102, it will all go through the SIP trunk, and the SIP trunk will rewrite whatever the caller ID to the the caller ID that you're entering on the SIP trunk, and it's going to send that to the outside world. Let's say you want to have like multiple caller IDs and you don't want to have specific caller ID and you want to have each user to have their own caller IDs, then you won't be entering the caller ID on the SIP trunk SIP trunk level, but you will be entering them on the user level. For example, user one uses 12345 and user two or 101 uses 67890. So basically, when extension 100 calls, it's going to use its own caller ID to the outside world. So person receiving the call here will be seeing 12345 and not what's entered on the trunk level. And for says likewise, someone making a call from 101, it's going to use their own caller ID. There's a question. So does the emergency number ignore max trunk usage? Nope. Emergency number still needs a channel to push the call to the outside world. So you need to have a free channel for it. And per outbound route, so this is where so this is the same place where the outbound rules were. Yeah, where you can strip digits or prepend. So you can also enter a caller ID in here, and that's the last point in the 3.6 where the call will be pushed out. So that has more priority or higher priority. And outbound caller ID format. So yeah, so this is what I previously mentioned. So use the correct outbound caller ID format. So make sure what format your carrier is expecting or using. The most common or the three most common use format was +61 or 61 or 0. So you need to know what your provider uses. For example, Breeze uses 61. So all the IDs or caller IDs need be the trunk will expect in the 61 format, not plus or not 0. Do you have any questions so far? If there are no questions, let's set up a SIP trunk. So this is the same system that we installed yesterday, the 3.6 hosted with 3.6 dedicated instance. Let me close the rest so we can just have this. And just give me 1 second, guys. Let me get a SIP trunk. Meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to post it on the chat, guys. I hope everyone can see my screen. So this is the account that we or 3.6 that we installed yesterday. And let me show you first where you add the emergency number. So all you need to go to admin, system and emergency. This is where you can add emergency numbers in there. Since there is no SIP trunk or no outbound rules, it's not allowing me to add. So let's add a SIP trunk first. So for adding a SIP trunk, so you go to voice and chat, click on add trunk, and you select Australia. And these are all the preferred SIP trunk provider or supported SIP trunk provider and generic SIP trunks that's available in Australia. And I'm going to use Breeze because Breeze is also a part of Leader. And okay, so you can see it automatically set up all the templates and everything. So put up the registrar server and everything. So all I now need is the authentication ID and password. So I'm going to give it a name. So let me put that as test trunk. And let me grab I have the authentication ID, password, and I'm putting a number. So we always use, or Breeze always uses 61 format, so 61473301. No, 870785300. So that's the number. So mm, yeah. So the main trunk number. So all I'm giving the SIP trunk a name and main trunk number, authentication ID, authentication password. The registrar will already be entered, and I'm hitting save. And I'll come back to the outbound rules again. So if I go to voice and chat, and you can see the test trunk that is now registered. And if I check my trunk on the other side, let me bring that screen here. So this is our test trunk. So if I click refresh, yep. So this is the authentication ID and password that I use. As soon as I put that into the 3.6, it turns registered, and I can see what IP it's registering from and what's it's registering to. So that's how you register a SIP trunk. And yeah, so with the SIP trunk, so you have the main trunk number. So if someone dials the number, it's going to connect to there. And you have a default route set up. So it's pointing to 100. So you can point it to go to a voicemail box or to a ring group or digital receptionist or a queue or a department. And you can add additional numbers here. So for example, if I want to add the next number in sequence of 61870785301. Save. So let's say you have like 100 numbers. You cannot add 100 numbers one by one. That's time consuming. That's a waste of time, to be honest. So, but because for that, so they have the import feature. So all you need to do is click on import, and you can have all the DIDs on a .txt format or an XML file, and then you can upload it directly, and all DIDs will be pushed into here. Save. And if I'm going here, and yes, the ID numbers is where you add the IDs. And if your SIP trunk supports SMS, then you will have the SMS tab. But if it doesn't support SMS, then you won't have the SMS tab. For example, if I go to add SIP trunk and select Alloy Voice and then OK, so they don't have the SMS tab because they are not a supported SMS provider for 3.6. So since Breeze supports SMS, so that's why you can see the SMS tab. And we'll be looking into a bit more detail while we're looking at the messaging options in the advanced modules. So let's go to options. So you can also, if you have like multiple departments like sales, or let's say you have a department for Melbourne and Sydney and Adelaide or different states, you can limit it to just that particular state. And the number of simultaneous calls per trunk, so you can limit that. If you don't want the trunk to make outbound calls, you just want it to receive calls, you can just disable outbound calling. And you can also have caller ID format and reformat caller ID format. So for example, whenever the call is coming in, so they just customer wants to see just the 8 digits or with the zero or stuff like that. Caller ID control, this is where I previously mentioned, the place where you can enter the caller ID on the trunk level. And codec priority, so this all these stuffs are part of the template. So as soon as you select Breeze Connect, so it's going to pre-fill the stuff that is mandatory, or the template that the trunk would work with, where Breeze Connect will automatically be pushed, and the codec priority from Breeze Connect will be pushed. And sorry. So yeah, so that's all the options, and you have the view template option to see what exactly is happening in the template. So what are all the codecs, field names, and parameters, inbound parameters, outbound parameters, and everything. And you can also, the other way to see that is if you click on the three dots, and you can see have the option to refresh registration or check SIP trunk. And check SIP trunk will do a trunk analysis. This is something that's was released in the latest feature of the latest update of the 3.6, it's going to do the normal testing to see if everything is working right. And you can also make an inbound call test and outbound call test to making sure if there is no latency or packet loss or stuff like that. We'll be looking at that a bit more in detail during the troubleshooting module in advanced. And you also have the switch template if you want to switch to a different template, SIG template, view template, and stuff. So view template is basically the option that we saw earlier. So you can see everything on the template. So anything that you would be needing to edit is on the front UI, and anything that you need to tweak settings in the back end or the back end of the template. So you are still allowed to do it. So you can, but I would, if you're doing it, I would not recommend you to do that directly on the existing one. I would recommend copy paste, create a new template, and in that template make changes. For example, if you want remote party calling ID to be originator caller ID, so you can just edit that and then add as a new template and use that template. And yeah, that's how you set up a SIP trunk. And that's where this is the place where you can add caller ID on a trunk level. And if you go to user, these are the two users that we created. Let's say I want to assign a number to the test user 1. You can see, so these are the two numbers that we have on the trunk. So it automatically appears in the drop down box. So you don't have to manually enter. So you can just select one. And whenever a call comes in, it's going to push that call out. So let's say I want inbound calls to come directly come to me, but when I'm making a call out, I need to share the main business number. So what I can do is I can just use the main business number. So whenever someone dials that number, it's going to push the call to this user. But when I'm calling out, it won't use that number because I have a user level caller ID. And save. So if I go here, so you can see when I'm calling out, so it's going to show that number as the caller ID. And now let's go to outbound rules. So this is where you add your outbound rules, and the order is always from top to bottom. So you might get a question or two from outbound rules. And so for example, let's say Breeze Connect follows 6.1, but I want to dial numbers as 0.2 or 0.4 and stuff like that. So all I need to do is create a rule for, let's say, local and call starting with the prefix. So I'm putting 0.2, and you don't need to create multiple rules. You can add multiple prefixes just by adding a comma. So 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.7, 0.8. And if you want to set for specific extensions, you can do it. And calls from length of, so these numbers will always be a length of 10. So that's the standard. So you have the 8-digit number plus the state code plus the 0. So that's going to be 10. And if you want to restrict this outbound rule per department, so you can do it. And I'm selecting the trunk. I'm using the test trunk. And since Breeze follows 6.1 format, I'm telling the outbound rule to what it does is if a call comes in, so when someone dials 0.4, or let's say 0.8 or 0.7 or 0.4, I need to strip the first digit and add a 6.1 in the front and hit save. So now what this rule does is the call come when you dial a number. So let's try making a call. So let me dial. You can see it automatically added the 6.1 in the front. So if I go to call log, so the number that we dialed was 0.8, but since it passed through the rule, it automatically stripped the 6.1 and stripped the 0 and added the 6.1 in the front. This will also make things easy. For example, you have a customer that wants to dial just the 8 digits and it still needs to connect it. Let's say I want a rule. I'm naming that as text, and calls with the prefix. I don't know the prefix because the 8 digits can be from 0 to 9. And so the number of length is going to be 8 because it's just going to be the 8 digits. And I'm selecting the trunk and stripping no digit because the user will be dialing just the 8 digits. And I'll be prepending 618 in the front and save. So now I have two rules. So for example, if so I'll show you. So now I'm going to dial three numbers. So one with just the 8 digits, one with just the 08, and one with 618. So if I dial just the 8 digits, so 70785300. Now it is going to follow the second rule because we're just dialing the number with 8 digits and it's going to automatically prepend the 618 in the front. And now if I dial 0870785300, we have a rule to match and it automatically added the 61 in the front. What if I dial 61870785300? Will the call connect or not? The call is not connecting. The reason is because we don't have a rule to say if a call starts from 61, it needs to use the trunk to go out. Let me see if it shows up in here. So see, number not found was replaced by the voice agent because I got a prompt saying that now a call could not be connected. The reason is because when I dialed the 8 digits, the call connected. When I dialed the 08, the call connected because there was a matching rule. When I dialed 618, the call didn't connect. The reason is because I need to have a rule. Let's say have a rule saying 61 and I need to have a trunk and strip no digit because it already starts with the 61 and then it needs to push the call out. There is a question. So while we are on the subject of the SIP trunk, what level of packet sniffing is possible on the 3.6 environment to debug trunk level failures? So the SIP trunk has its own testing box where you can check inbound calls, packet losses, and stuff. Or you also have a capture feature where you can make a test call and it's going to give you a packet capture and you can investigate through Wireshark. We'll be looking that in depth or way more in depth in the advanced module. What is the correct emergency configuration for SMB free version? Admin system doesn't show. That is a really good question. In that scenario, you can add the as a outbound rule. So for example, emergency, and you put those calls with prefix 000. Just go through the trunk and then save. And you make sure if you're doing through the outbound rule, make sure that is the first rule because outbound rules always follow from top to bottom. Cool. That's pretty much everything on SIP trunks and outbound rules. Do you have any questions so far? So for emergency number, don't ignore max trunk. Should there be a free trunk set so we can call emergency? It just you need to have enough channels on your current trunk. So it's not like let's say you have a 8 channel trunk, so not 8 channel will be used all the time, but it's always good to have a buffer. So if you so whenever people getting SIP trunks from Breeze Connects, I would say if they are using only 2 channels or 3 channels, I would recommend them to get a 4 channel so that if by any chance if there is a fourth call, they won't lose the call. Cool. Any questions, guys? Cool. If there are no further questions, let's take a quick 5 minute break and I'll still stay here for if you have any questions. Is it possible to make a template to get all these common outbound rules created on new 3.6 installs rather than add them manually every time? Um, Unfortunately not. So there is no import option for the outbound rules. I've seen quite few people asking for that, but I don't know why 3.6 doesn't have that option. So yeah, for the time being, so everything needs to be manually entered, unfortunately. Does 3.6 support IAX2 style trunks? I don't think so. 3.6 is purely based on SIP, and I don't think it supports any exchange version trunks. But yeah, so I can I'm 99% sure it doesn't support. But feel free to shoot an email to help at Breeze Connect, and we can check with 3.6 to confirm that for you. Is it possible to reserve internal extension like 000 999 to make sure it won't be allocated to any users? Not actually. Yeah, I don't think so. Whenever you're creating the extensions, you need to make sure it always starts from 100 though, so it doesn't go any extension that is like 001. So if you just follow through the numbers that the 36 is automatically allocating, you won't be having issue. But before hitting save, just make sure you are not creating an extension that is 000 or anything else. What level of packet sniffing is possible in 3.6 environment to debug trunk failures? So you have the default trunk check feature, and also you have the packet capture feature on the 3.6, where you can take a packet capture and it's going to give you a packet capture Wireshark file where you can see all the invites and everything a bit more in detail. Any other question, guys? Can you load share across all trunks? Can you be a bit more specific on what you're after? Let's continue through setting up your team. So basically, now that you know how to deploy your 361 system, so now let's jump into. You've also set up a user SIP trunk and everything. So now in the within the user, so what are all the different roles that you can set, different departments or different profiles that you can have and stuff like that. And oops, I accidentally. Cool. So there are different profiles that's available based on time of the day. So which is basically available away or do not disturb, which you come across day to day on your normal Teams or Outlook or anywhere, any kind of like profile that you use, you would have these options or seen these options. 36 does also have these options. So they have like 5 different options which is available away to not disturb, and also custom 1 and custom 2. So changing profiles, and you can change these profiles directly through the 36 app or PWA client and use this with department administrators. So for example, let's say you are a manager and you for your department and you have people under your department. So if you are set up as a department administrator, you can also change roles for people within your department as well. And let's say you are not using 3CX apps and I'm just using physical phones. How do I then change the status? You can set up dial code. So for example, star three would be the profile changing dial code. So for example, if you want to set something for a user for available, so you just dial star 30 and star 31 for away. And if you want to put the put as DND or do not disturb, so you dial star 32, and the end user doesn't need to remember all these dial codes. You can put that as a speed dial onto one of the BLFs the handset have. So that's an easy way to configure. And importing and syncing users from Microsoft 365. So if you have Microsoft 365, you can import extensions and automatically sync users. When you add or delete Microsoft 365 users, it will automatically reflect or sync into the 36. If you're yeah, so and also auto switch based on time. So that is also available through the Microsoft 365 integration. So for example, if you have a 365 integration or a Teams integration, and if you set your Teams to DND, it will automatically push that setting into 36, and your 36 account will also will be set to DND. And boss secretary. This is so boss secretary is something that is available only on the new version of version 23CX. So you can configure the boss secretary function from the admin console for any user for the PBX once you allow boss secretary. So what it does is, let's say you have a personal assistant. So the calls, you can direct calls or they can be like a screening point, and only when they approve or want to pass the call, it will directly go to you. You can assign a secretary or a PA. You can select on regular user extension, or if you have an AI assistant to screen calls, you can still use that AI personal assistant and you can screen calls and then go through. And you can also select the hours during which the designated secretary will screen calls for the boss. And you can also select whether the secretary will screen internal calls, external calls, or all calls, and define trusted allowed direct callers who can reach the boss without having the secretary screen calls. And forwarding rule options, so there are different forwarding rule options that you can do on a user level. So, and you can also set each and every call based on internal or external. For example, all calls internal needs to go to or ring my mobile, or external calls needs to go to voicemail. So you can also set things like that. So you can set up pretty granular on what you want to achieve or what the customer wants to achieve to make sure it can cater all the requirements. So the different places that you can forward calls to is voicemail of an extension or the own extension or to a different extension. You can forward calls to a mobile or to an external number and also another user in the same system, or you can directly end the call. For example, let's say I'm putting my E extension on DND, but if I receive a call internal, it needs to leave a voicemail. If I receive a call external, I want the call to be pushed to a ring group with other users so that the call they can answer and sort that out, so stuff like that. And forwarding rule options. So there are 5 constant options that you will be able to see on the 3CX, which is ring mobile simultaneously. This is something some people use. So what this option does is if you enable that feature and if you have a mobile number on your extension, so whenever there is a call coming in, rather directly or someone forwarding the call or through a ring group or an IVR or through a call queue, whenever the call is coming in, it will also ring your mobile, not the 3.6 app on your mobile, but your actual mobile directly and accept multiple calls. So that's basically, let's say I'm on a call at the moment, and when a second call comes in, it will directly go to voicemail. But if you have that option enabled, so what it does is the second call will also ring and you can see it on the screen and you can decide whether you want to take the second call and say, please wait for a few more minutes, on another call and put them on hold. And then you can pick the first call again. This option might be super helpful for receptionists because when the receptionist is busy, they don't want calls to go to voicemail, but rather the call can wait on the they can answer the call and let them know that you will be giving them a call and stuff like that. And accept calls from ring group and accept push notification is for the mobile apps and stuff. And forwarding rules per profile. So there are 5 different profiles available away DND in custom 1 and custom 2. So the format or the way how it works is similar for available and custom 1. So when you set someone on available or custom 1, what it does is it's going to ring. The options are going to be like ring for a certain amount of time, and after the time, it's going to push the call to whatever the forwarding rules option is. But people setting to away do not disturb or custom to, so that's instantly triggered. There will be no timeout. I'll show you how to set these up or how the option looks like during the demo. And call external calls. So we'll get a possible mobile or external number. So we'll get a call deflection 302. And when forwarding rules do not apply. So let's say calls from ring groups or queues are hitting your extension. And if your available status, if the extension is on available status, the forwarding rules are ignored because it's going to ring your extension directly. But if you set to away or DND, only forward to external number or mobiles are allowed, so rebound calls will not be forwarded. You might get a question or two regarding this. When does the forwarding rules apply? And 3.6 might get a bit tricky with the question. So they will ask when does the call, for example, I'm saying, so it's not going to be a question that you will be receiving, but maybe. So it's they will ask questions like when does the forwarding rules do not apply, and they are going to tweak the answer saying on available status forwarding rules will not be ignored, which is a false because it will be ignored. So questions like that. And when forwarding rules do not apply, so note that if you're using boss secretary rules, so that have the highest priority, overriding all the other forwarding rules and forwarding exception rules. This guarantees consistent and predictable call routing, and also allowed direct callers bypass all forwarding or boss secretary rules and bring the boss directly regardless of any other forwarding logic. And also boss secretary logic is evaluated next, and calls are routed to the secretary or PA or even the AI agent as defined. And if a call is forwarded by the boss secretary rules, then no other forwarding rules are applied. This prevents chaining of conflicts with the other rules. If none of the rules are triggered, then the system proceeds to evaluate the regular call forwarding exceptions by ignoring the all. And voicemail greetings. Let me, yeah, that's fine. So voicemail greetings, it's able to define a different greeting per profile, and you can also set up different greeting for voicemails, intro prompt, or for example, if I'm away and it goes to voicemail, you can set a prompt like, sorry, I'm not able to pick your call. And or if I'm DND, so you can set a prompt like, sorry, I'm not available at the moment. Please leave a voicemail. Or if I'm away, so sorry, I've stepped out for a bit and then I'll give you a call back. Please leave a message. So it, that's so, but that way, so you can have like different messages for each and every profile that you set. And it also overrides default greeting only for specific status. And audio format always needs to be WAV PCM 8 kilohertz 16-bit mono, and it always needs to be a WAV file if you try to upload MP3 or MP4, so this system will reject. Exceptions allows calls from certain caller IDs to be treated differently. And for example, let's say you want all calls from a particular number needs to be blocked, or all calls from a particular number needs to be always pushed to your mobile phone. So you can set up an exception rule saying calls from this number needs to be sent busy. That by that way you won't be receiving the call at all. And also you can use the asterisk as the wildcard. And order of the exception rule matters, something similar to the outbound rules. It always processes the rules from top to bottom, and if it finds a match on the first or second rule, all the other rules below it will be ignored. So this is how an priority of a call flow would look like. Please note, guys, you will definitely get a question related to this. So whenever there is a call coming in, the first thing the 3.6 will check is if there is an exception rule, because that has more priority. Only when only when there is an exception rule, or only when there is not an exception rule, or none of the rules in the exception matches, then it checks what status or profile the user is on. So if it is away or sorry, available, away, or DND, or custom 1 or custom 2, and depending on if it is, let's say if the call coming in, there is no exception rule and the user is set to available, then it's going to forward the call and oops, ignore that line. So call's going to be forwarded to the extension, and if no answer or busy, then it follows the second routing. And if it is away, so it's going to see if it is an internal call or an external call, and it's going to trigger instantly. So remember, so available and custom 1 functions the same way, and away, do not disturb, and custom 2, they are instantly triggered. So it won't wait for a particular amount of time for it to be triggered. So it's just going to see the user is set to away or DND. If it is internal call, what it needs to do. If it is external call, what it needs to do. It's instantly triggered. And custom 1 is treated as the same way as away. So call comes in, and if it is no answer where I need to send to, or busy no where I need to send to. Something that's super important for you to know is available, away, DND are automatic switching, and custom 1 and custom 2 are manual switching. So for example, let's say you have a custom 1 profile, different routing. When I say custom 1 and custom 2, so you can pretty much like use it for anything. So let's say you want to have a lunch routing or a travel routing. So you can rename custom one as travel, just for example. So when I put that to the travel routing, you can set, so whenever a call comes in, so whenever I'm traveling interstate or overseas, I need to have a different routing. So you can set up on a custom one. So if I'm overseas, if I didn't pick the call within 20-second mark, it needs to push to a different department or to my manager or stuff like that. You can do like that. And please note, if I set an extension on custom one or custom two, when the office is closed, it won't go to, let's say, available away D&D are time based. So if you're in office hours, it's going to be available. If you're on break, it's going to away. And if you're out office hours, it's going to be D&D. So this will automatically switch based on time of the day. But custom one, let's say if I'm putting an extension on custom one, and my you cannot expect it to change to DND during after hours or away or available. So you need to manually change it to away about available away or DND so that it follows the normal office hours if you want automatic switching to be on. So if you're using custom one or if you use custom one, then you need to manually switch it because you'll be manually switching that to custom one or two, and you need to manually switch it back to one of that if that still wants to follow the automatic switching. Do you have any questions so far? Cool. If there are no further questions, let's jump into a quick demo. So yep, this is the same instance that we created. So let's go to users. I'm going to test user one, and if I go to call forwarding, so that's where I can see all the options available: away, D&D, lunch, business trip, which is the custom one and custom two, and you can rename them. So if you go to system options, you can rename it to, let's say, travel, business trip, or diversion even, and stuff like that. If you so you can rename those. And if I go to user that and call forwarding, yeah, so you can see the main difference between available and away. So the on away, so the forward calls to internal and external. So it's instantly triggered. But if I choose away, so you can see there is a timeout. So that's going to be the same format for custom one and available. So call comes in, it's going to ring for a certain amount of time, let's say for 60 seconds. And if no one picks the call for 60 seconds, what I need to do I need to, and you can set up different routing for internal, external, depending on the requirement. So if it is an external call, I need to send to voicemail. But if it is an internal call, I need to send to my mobile. And the reason why it's showing that is because I don't have a mobile number. So I'll put that 614123456 being saved just so that it, yeah. So you can see, so when no one picks the call within 60 seconds, for external calls, it needs to go to voicemail. Internal calls needs to go to my mobile. And if my extension is busy or not registered, it needs to go to, let's say, a different extension. You can do it, or you need to go to, so you can send busy or same as all calls. So depending on the time and the customer's requirement, so you have the flexibility to choose those options directly depending. And general options, so this is the one, so also ring my mobile. So if I enable that, so whenever a call comes in, if I'm available, it's going to ring the 36 app or the IP phone plus the mobile number, not the 36 app on the mobile, the actual mobile. Accept multiple calls, or if I'm available, log out of the queue. So you can enable that accept calls from ring group or push notification. They're enabled by default. And away or DND, you can see those are pretty identical. And the reason is because you can set it's instantly triggered. It won't ring for a certain amount of time, and it will directly you can push the call. If it is an internal call, I need to go to my mobile. If it is an external call, I need to go to a system extension, which can be a ring group call queue or anything or an external number. I need to follow when some if I'm DND and someone is calling and I need that call to go is an external call and I need to go call to go to a different number, I can use that as well. Putting that as voicemail for now. So if I'm setting to DND or away, so I need to log out of the queue. Or if you disable it, so you will still be logged in the queue. If you can still receive queue calls, but you can't receive any normal calls or external calls and stuff. And yes, away DND and business trip are the same. And lunch, you can see um, it's similar to what set available setting would look like. And you can put it a profile name, say, let's say you can name it as a business trip or lunch or break or travel or diversion, depending on whatever the custom profile. So if a profile that you cannot cater using the available away or DND, you can use the custom owner custom to do that. Exceptions. So you might get a question or two from this. So basically, this has the more priority when a call comes in. The first thing it checks is if there is any exception rule. If there are no exception rule, then it checks if it is available away or DND and follows accordingly. And adding a rule is pretty easy. So if I want to click add, so let's say calls from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just putting that as an example. So if someone calls from that number to my extension during office hours, I need to send the call to my mobile, or I need to send busy to block the call, or I need to send it to a different extension. And okay. And another rule. So let's say 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And during break time it needs to go to voicemail, so stuff like that. So you can add multiple rules to as an exception rule if you want to do anything that is different to what you can do with the available or away or DND or the custom owner custom to. You can add that as an exception, and this has the more priority. And you can also set up like a wildcard rule, so which is asterisk is the wildcard. So any calls, which means so if you just put the asterisk, it's any calls during my let's say on Friday 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. always need to go to my mobile. So you can be you can create whatever rule that you want. And the next one is the boss secretary. So which is you need to enable, so which can so you can either assign a user as a secretary, or if you have an AI agent created, so you can create add that as for in that scenario we only have two extensions. So the only other option that I have is I'm adding 100 as the first secretary, and additional call handlers if there are more users you want to add as a PA or an assistant, so you can add. And active during office hours, and call types all calls, internal calls or external calls, and allowed direct callers so if you want, and boss secretary mode is on. So basically whenever a call comes into your extension during office hours and let's say in external calls only, it will be pushed to this user, and from that user they can decide whether they want to push the call or do a screening or get the details or book an appointment and stuff like that. So that's pretty much everything on setting up your team. Do you have any questions, guys? There are no questions. We can jump into the next module, so which is departments. So department is something that you will be using most commonly with your for your customers. So for example, it can be anything like you have a sales department, accounts department, support department within an organization, or you have like multiple branches and you're managing all the branches from one single 3.6. So you can put like Adelaide SA department, big department, NSW department, and stuff like that. And each department has its own settings. You can add users to department, and a single user can be part of multiple departments. Let's say I'm from Adelaide department, also from the tech department. So if there are two different departments, I can also be on both the departments, but I need to have a main department membership. And it's possible for a user within the department to see other users and perform action on other users. And also there are different roles that are available. So where do you set the office hours? Yeah, I'll show that during the demo there, this one, because office hours, departments, and roles are covered in this module that we are looking at now. So each user, there are different roles that are available, and the first user that is created will be the system owner, and they have the most super admin access over the whole account. And the next one would be system admin, owner, department admin, manager, receptionist, and any user that you create will be the user. And depending on the access a user needs or an extension needs, you can set them on one of these, so that for example, I'm the branch manager for SA. So and internal IT can be system owner or system admin, and or you can be the system owner or system admin if you're managing it. And I'm the branch manager, so I need to or the team lead. I need to have access to my team or the extensions in my team or users in my team. I can be a department administrator or a manager, so I can have access to only my team and stuff like that. And yeah, on new installation, the first user that is created will be the system owner. And a system owner can elevate users to system admin and can elevate users to system owner dedicated service only. So you might get a question. So for example, if I am a system owner, I can create or elevate any extension to any of these roles. Let's say I'm a department administrator, then I cannot elevate a user or I cannot create a user that is a owner or system admin or system owner. But I can create new user or elevate user from manager, receptionist, or user, or even department administrator. So let's say I'm a system admin. I cannot create a system owner, but I can create or elevate any of these users. So the order is important. So you might get a question or two from that. So if I'm, example, like I am a owner of the instance, can I create an extension with system admin access? The answer would be no, because owner have access to create only owner, department admin, manager, receptionist, and user. So yes, it requires a and also system owner email always requires a unique email address, and the reason is because let's say you are doing a forget password, and you have your system owner email. You have to let's say there are two extensions on the system. One is a receptionist, and the other one is a system owner, and both of them have the same email, and you forgot your password. And when you do a forget password with the email, 3.6 would not know which user you're requesting the password for. So hence you won't receive any password reset and you will lose access to the 3.6 phone system. So it's a mandatory rule. The system owner email needs to be unique and cannot be used across any other users. Let's say you have two system owner users and or system owner and system admin and both on the same email. If you try to trigger a password reset, you will not get a password reset. So but that way you will be losing access to the 3.6 phone system. So make sure the email is always unique. And department view, so from the department you can so you can see from the image, so there is a training department, sales, office, and UK department, and you can on a per user basis can see rights to see users or perform operations in the department if you're a system owner and logging in. I'll show these where you can find during the demo. And department publishing, so makes all extension visible to everyone, so no calls visible or no call control actions. Office hours. The office hours function allows you to handle calls differently based on time of the day. And oops. Yeah. Yeah, so the office hours function allows you to handle calls differently based on time of the day. Office hours are configured at either globally or department level and any extension or system extensions. So for example, you can either set, let's say you have multiple departments like sales, account support, but I'm part of the support team and that particular user needs to have a different office hours. Yes, you can do it. You can set up office hours based on extension, and office hours are configured at department level or any extensions, and it will automatically inherit the office hours. And these office hours are often or then referred to in the extension or the system extension configuration, so that you can set different destination based on time of the call is received. And it is something that's super important to understand, because it is based on endpoint extension and the system extension at which the calls arrives or applied. And so it does not matter from which IVR or SIP trunk the calls came from. It only matter where it arrives. If it arrives to a particular department, let's say it's coming to a queue, and the queue is part of a different department, it's going to follow that office hours for that particular queue. So let's say you have a general IVR or a main IVR in your default group, which uses the main office hours and offers calls to a choice of sales or support queues. And these will have slightly different work hours. For example, sales take longer lunch breaks and stuff like that. Just a sec. There's a question. Does the user office hours supersede department offices? Yes. User office has more priority, and it's going to ignore completely the default officers. So the different department officers is in office time, break times, and out office time, and it can alter the behavior of department, system extensions, which is the call queue, IVRs, and ring groups, and users. And call routing, DIDs are routed at the destination based on the department, user, or system extension, and times are defined by department hours, and even holidays are defined by hours. So for existing users of 3CX coming from earlier version, it's important to note that 3CX has no longer have a single standard office hours. You need to set office hours per department, and which are applied at the SIP trunk level, but now the default office hours are applied at the department level. Rather than apply office hours based on which SIP trunk the call is received, office hours are applied based on destination of the call or which department the call is landing from. If you are familiar with version 18, which is the old system. So for example, in version 18, if you had a SIP trunk with 100 DIDs, you face the issue of having to create multiple trunks and assign DIDs according to apply different officers. With version 20, you don't have to do it because you can have one single trunk, you can have multiple departments and set up officers for different departments. So officers within the PBX, user, so this is where this was the question that was asked previously by Tim. So all user office hours overrides the department office hours. User office hours has more priority compared to the department office hours. And department holidays. And department holidays can be set either per department, and you can set it for a single day or a range of days, and or a particular hours of the day or a full day. And you can also set it on annual basis. For example, every year from 24th of December to 2nd of January, it needs to be a holiday, and you don't need to go and set that up every year because you can do that globally. And it defines when the department is in holiday mode. And overriding open closed hour break mode. So let's say you're a receptionist or a support team and you got into work early and want to open the office. You don't have to wait for the time to hit 8:30 or 9 p.m. So if you're early there, you want to start it from your 3.6 app or web client, you can override office hours and set the office hours to in office. And you can override open office hours from the account menu tab on the web client. I'll show you where to find that option. And yes, you can do the same thing to close the office hours. Let's say everyone's leaving off early, or there is a event that for everyone in the office that's going, so you don't need to wait for the time to tick. So you can just set the office hours for the entire office to close, and only user with receptionist role or higher can trigger this function. A normal user cannot use or trigger this function. User profile switching. So user profile will automatically change based on the time of the day or the office hours. So in office hours, the profile will be set to available. Break times it's set to away, and outside office hours it's set to do not disturb. And the user behaves based on the active profile forwarding. This is what I previously mentioned. User profile will not automatically change if the profile are set to custom one or custom two or use. So let's say you are putting a user on custom one, then you can't expect like as soon as the clock ticks out of office, the user will be changed to do not disturb. It won't do it. It's going to stay on custom one as long as you change it to default office hours or to change to one of these profiles, and that goes to same for custom 2. If you're in custom 1 or 2, it's going you the extension is going to stay on that as long as you're manually switching it back to the default office or the normal office routing. And there is also sorry, there is a question. Can you override from a physical phone? So when you say override, do you mean the profile or the office hours? Yes, Chris. So you can override. So there is also dial codes for office hours to push. I can show you where or how to set that up, and you can set that dial code onto a customer's BLF saying in office, press a button, out office, or a day mode or night mode, so whatever you can call it. So you can set that up on dial code and into the BLF, so the person can or the user can just press a button and they can switch between them. And so the correct way of setting an office hours is there needs to be or that can or cannot be a break between two close times. So for example, this one is correct. So for example, the office is closed till 9 o'clock, and at 9 o'clock it opens, and from 9 to 12 it open, and 12 to 1 is break time or lunchtime, and 1 to 5 it's open and it's closed until the next day. And you can also set like office opens at 8 till 11 and break in between, and open again and office is closed, and open again and break and open again and then office is closed. So this is also the correct way of doing it, but you cannot set like two breaks. So there can be a break, there can be only one break between two closed hours. So if you're having two closed timings, there can only be one single break. So you cannot have multiples. So you cannot set up like break, break, and break. So in that way, if you're looking at if you want a break, so you can use the closed one. But the other thing is, when you set that as closed, in that particular interval, so it's going to be switched to DND and not as a Um, you might get a question on this to see if you can set up multiple breaks between office hours or multiple breaks on the same day. So yeah, so you cannot have multiple breaks. Only one break can be there between open and closed hours. Let's jump into a quick demo. Yeah. So to create a department, so this is where we go. So department, and you click add, and you can add a department. Let's say sales department, and I'm adding hosted training and the two users that we created. And let's create a support department. and I'm adding just the extension 100. So you can see a user can be part of multiple groups. And if I go to the user, now you can see the first user is part of 3 different groups. The default one, which is automatically created, sales and support. And you can specify what's the main department membership. So you can ask, okay, I have 3 departments the user is assigned to. They have 3 different officers. Which one will it follow? It will always follow whatever the default or main department membership is. So if I set it to sales, then it's just going to have sales as their main department. So you can see, so whatever office are set for sales, that's what it's going to follow. And in here, so I'll setting it to sales again. So whatever the sales department's office hours is, that's what it follows. And if I go to the user and click on view, so that's where I can set. So for example, for sales department, I need full access. Default departments, I can barge in, see presence, see calls, and I don't want to do, or the user doesn't need to do call operations or user operation. Support can only see presence. So you can granularly tweak the permissions that you want to give a user for a department. And it only shows what, for example, since the first user that we went in part of 3 departments, it showed all of them. So if you go to the second one, which is part of only 2 department, it will only have options for those 2 departments. And if we go to, if you want to edit the details, so you can go and edit, and you can set the prompts and stuff. If you want to publish department information to all extensions, you can do it. And that's how you create a department. And office hours, this is where you can set up office hours. You have 3 department default, sales and support. For example, sales needs to run from, oops, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And okay, so on Monday 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and you can set it, and you can also add break hours. Within the 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., 1 to 2 p.m. would be the break time. So yeah, you can see from Monday 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. is open hours, and from 1 to 2 it's closed hours, and you can set it for each and every day. And for support, let's say I want to clear everything and then starts from scratch. So Monday 9 to 6, Tuesday 9 to 6, Wednesdays off, Thursday 9 to 6, Friday 9 to 6, and you can configure office hours for holders. And if you're not entering anything, so that is considered as a office has closed. So yeah, so that, and you can also set up time zones. That is useful if you have multiple states or time zones for departments. For example, there is a branch in UK and there is a branch in Australia, so you can set the time zone differently for each departments. And office holidays, that's where you can enter the holidays. So you can click add, and you can give it a name. Let's say Christmas, I want to happen that annually, and it's going to be a range of days, and the range of days is going to be, let's say December 23 to 31. And if I want a different office, sorry, any office holiday prompt that you want to set, you can set that up and save. So during that time, it's going to push to the holiday routing. And someone asked the question how to trigger the actually before going to that, and overriding office hours. So from the user, since I'm the system owner, I have the option to trigger or override the office hours. And if I click the top right corner, the profile, you can see the override office hours here. And if I click on it, it gives me the option. Since I'm the system owner and I'm part of all the departments, I have the option to trigger whatever I want. And I want support department. Office is closed for the next 12 hours. And okay, and it's pushed that setting. So for the next 12 hours, the support team, people in the support team will have their office closed routing. So that's how you override. And you can do the same thing in office or out office through call, dial codes. But that can be achieved only through the call scripts. I will still show you how to do it, but we'll be looking into a bit more in detail during the advanced module. So if you go to integration, call scripts, there are some scripts that are already available in the marketplace. For example, you can see reset department to default or department in or out. So sorry, I'm not sure which one I click. So I can click the in office, out office routing, and I would say out office. And when people presses the dial code, and you can set your own dial code. Let's say if I dial star 501, it needs to, oops, not star there. Star 501 system wide, it needs to go to out office. So call scripts are not available because I'm using the test or the trial instance, trial license, the 28-day trial period. So call scripts are not available. But this is where you set. So you can set up a dial code for out office, and you can do a star 502 for in office routing. And you can set that up on the BLF button on a handset, and you can process that directly by pressing a button on the dial code, and that's going to push that setting across the 3.6 system. That's pretty much everything for today. Do you have any questions, guys? Feel free to ask any questions related to today's or yesterday's module, guys. So for the override office hours setting, is it only available via web and dial codes? No way to do on a desk phone. The only way to do on a desk phone is using the dial codes. Either the end user needs to remember the dial code, or you can set that up on a BLF, saying speed dial for star 501. You can name it as night switch or day switch, and it's going to push the dial code to override the office hours. If there are no further questions, we can wind up the session for today. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you tomorrow. And I'll stick here for a bit more longer, so just in case if you have any questions. Thanks everyone.